Hentai, from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, at en.wikipedia.org. Not to be confused with Hentai Gana. This article is about the Japanese anime and manga pornography. For other uses, see cartoon pornography. Hentai. Japanese pornographic animation, comics, and video games. Outside of Japan, hentai is anime and manga pornography. In Japanese, however, hentai is not a genre of media but any type of perverse or bizarre sexual desire or act. For example, outside of Japan, a work of animation depicting a lesbian sex might be described as yuri hentai, but in Japan it would just be described as yuri. The word is short for hentai seioku, a perverse sexual desire. The word hentai, in Japanese, means transformation or metamorphosis. The implication of perversion or paraphilia was derived from there, and both meanings can be easily distinguished in context. Terminology. Hentai is a kanji compound of hen, change, weird or strange, and tai, appearance or condition. It also means perversion or abnormality, especially when used as an adjective. It is the shortened form of the phrase hentai seioku, which means sexual perversion. The character hen is a catch-all for queerness as a peculiarity. It does not carry an explicit sexual reference. While the term has expanded in use to cover a range of publications, including homosexual publications, it remains primarily a heterosexual term, as terms indicating homosexuality entered Japan as foreign words. Japanese pornographic works are often simply tagged as 18-kin, or 18 prohibited, meaning prohibited to those not yet 18 years old, and seishin manga, or adult manga. Less official terms also in use include ero anime, ero manga, and the English initialism AV for adult video. Usage of the term hentai does not define a genre in Japan. Hentai is defined differently in English. The Oxford Dictionary Online defines it as a subgenre of the Japanese genres of manga and anime, categorized by overly sexualized characters and sexually explicit images and plots. The origin of the word in English is unknown, but Anime Nation's John Opliger points to the early 1990s, when a Dirty Pair erotic doujinshi, self-published work, called H-Bomb was released, and when many websites sold access to images culled from Japanese erotic visual novels and games. The earliest English use of the term traces back to the rec.arts.anime boards, with a 1990 post concerning Haposai of Ranma 1/2, and the first discussion of the meaning in 1991. A 1995 glossary on the rec.arts.anime boards contained reference to the Japanese usage and the evolving definition of hentai as pervert or perverted sex. The Anime Movie Guide, published in 1997, defines ecchi as the initial sound of hentai, i.e., the name of the letter H as pronounced in Japanese. It included that ecchi is milder than hentai. A year later, it was defined as a genre in Good Vibrations' Guide to Sex. At the beginning of 2000, hentai was listed at the 41st most popular search term of the internet, while anime ranked 99th. The attribution has been applied retroactively to works such as Urotsuki Doji, La Blue Girl, and Cool Devices. Urotsuki Doji had previously been described with terms such as Japornimation and erotic grotesque prior to being identified as hentai. Etymology. The history of the word hentai has its origins in science and psychology. By the middle of the Meiji era, the term appeared in publications to describe unusual or abnormal traits, including paranormal abilities and psychological disorders. A translation of German sexologist Richard von Krafft-Ebing's text, Psychopathia Sexualis, originated the concept of hentai seioku as a perverse or abnormal sexual desire, though it was popularized outside psychology, as in the case of Mori Ogai's 1909 novel Vita Sexualis. Continued interest in hentai seioku resulted in numerous journals and publications on sexual advice which circulated in the public, served to establish the sexual connection of hentai as perverse. Any perverse or abnormal act could be seen as hentai, such as committing shinju, or love suicide. It was Nakamura Koiko's journal, Abnormal Psychology, which started the popular sexology boom in Japan, which would see the rise of other popular journals like Sexuality and Human Nature, Sex Research and Sex. Originally, Tanaka Kogai wrote articles for Abnormal Psychology, but it would be Tanaka's own journal, Modern Sexuality, which would become one of the most popular sources of information about erotic and neurotic expression. Modern Sexuality was created to promote fetishism, S&M, and necrophilia as a facet of modern life. The Eroguro movement and depiction of perverse, abnormal, and often erotic undertones were a response to the interest in hentai seiyuku. Following World War II, Japan took a new interest in sexualization and public sexuality. Mark McClelland puts forth the observation that the term hentai found itself shortened to H, and that the English pronunciation was ecchi, referring to lewdness, and which did not carry the stronger connotation of abnormality or perversion. By the 1950s, the hentai seiyuku publications became their own genre and included fetish and homosexual topics. By the 1960s, the homosexual content was dropped in favor of subjects like sadomasochism and stories of lesbianism targeted to male readers. The late 1960s brought a sexual revolution which expanded and solidified the normalizing the term's identity in Japan that continues to exist today through publications such as Basatsu Takara Jima's Hentai Sanga Iku series. History. With the usage of hentai as any erotic depiction, the history of these depictions is split into their media. Japanese artwork and comics serve as the first example of hentai material, coming to represent the iconic style after the publication of Azume Hido's Cybele in 1979. Japanese anime, had its first hentai in both definitions, with the 1984 release of Wonder Kids Lolita Anime, overlooking the erotic and sexual depictions in 1969's 1001 Arabian Nights, and the bare-breasted Cleopatra in 1970's Cleopatra, the film. Erotic games, another area of contention, has its first case of the art style depicting sexual acts in 1985's Tenshitachi no Gogo. In each of these mediums, the broad definition and usage of the term complicates its historic examination. Origin of erotic manga. Gratuitous illustrations of panties are a typical form of fan service. Depictions of sex and abnormal sex can be traced back through the ages, predating the term hentai. Shunga, a Japanese term for erotic art, is thought to have existed in some form since the Heian period. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, shunga works were often suppressed by shoguns. A well-known example is The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife, which depicts a woman being stimulated by two octopuses. Shunga production fell with the introduction of pornographic photographs in the late 19th century. To define erotic manga, a definition for manga is needed. While the Hokusai manga uses the term manga in its title, it does not depict the storytelling aspect common to modern manga, as the images are unrelated. Due to the influence of pornographic photographs in the 19th and 20th centuries, the manga artwork was depicted by realistic characters. Osamu Tezuka helped define the modern look and form of manga, and was later proclaimed as the god of manga. His debut work, New Treasure Island, was released in 1947 as a comic book through Ikue Publishing and sold over 400,000 copies. Though it was the popularity of Tezuka's Astro Boy, Metropolis, and Jungle Emperor manga that would come to define the media. This story-driven manga style is distinctly unique from comic strips like Seize-san, and story-driven works came to dominate shoujo and shonen magazines. Adult themes in manga have existed since the 1940s, but some of these depictions were more realistic than the cartoon cute characters popularized by Tezuka. Early well-known Ero Geikika releases were Ero Manga Tropa from 1973, Eron Geka 1975, and Alice from 1977. The distinct shift in the style of Japanese pornographic comics from realistic to cartoon cute characters is accredited to Hideo Azuma, the father of lolicon. In 1979, he penned Cybele, which offered the first depictions of sexual acts between cute, unrealistic Tezuka-style characters. This would start a pornographic manga movement. The lolicon boom of the 1980s saw the rise of magazines such as the anthologies Lemon People and Petit Apple Pie. The publication of erotic materials in the United States can be traced back to at least 1990, when INAVS Publications printed its first anime shower special. In March 1994, Antarctic Press released Bondage Fairies, an English translation of Insect Hunter. Origin of erotic anime. Because there are fewer animation productions, most erotic works are retroactively tagged as hentai since the coining of the term is in English. Hentai is typically defined as consisting of excessive nudity and graphic sexual intercourse, whether or not it is perverse. The term ecchi is usually related to fan service, with no sexual intercourse being depicted. Two early works escape being defined as hentai but contain erotic themes. This is likely due to the obscurity and unfamiliarity of the works, arriving in the United States and fading from a public focus a full 20 years before importation, and surging interests coined the Americanized term hentai. The first is the 1969 film 1001 Arabian Nights, which faithfully includes the erotic elements of the original story. In 1970, Cleopatra, Queen of Sex, was the first animated film to carry an X rating, but it was mislabeled as erotica in the United States. The Lolita Anime series is typically identified as the first erotic anime and original video animation, OVA. It was released in 1984 by Wonder Kids, containing 8 episodes. The series focused on underage sex and rape, and included one episode containing BDSM bondages. Several sub-series were released in response, including a second Lolita Anime series released by Nikatsu. It has not been officially licensed or distributed outside of its original release. The Cream Lemon franchise of works ran from 1984 to 2005, with a number of them entering the American market in various forms. The Brothers Grimm series, released by Excalibur Films, contained Cream Lemon works as early as 1986. However, they were not billed as anime and were introduced during the same time that the first underground distribution of erotic works began. The American release of licensed erotic anime was first attempted in 1991 by Central Park Media with I Give My All, but it never occurred. In December 1992, Devil Hunter Yoko was the first risque ecchi title that was released by AD Vision. While it contains no sexual intercourse, it pushes the limits of the ecchi category with sexual dialogue, nudity, and one scene in which the heroine is about to be raped. It was Central Park Media's 1993 release of Urotsukidoji, which brought the first hentai film to American viewers. Often cited for inventing the tentacle rape subgenre, it contains extreme depictions of violence and monster sex. As such, it is acknowledged for being the first to depict tentacle sex on screen. When the film premiered in the United States, it was described as being drenched in graphic scenes of perverse sex and ultra-violence. Following this release, a wealth of pornographic content began to arrive in the United States, with companies such as AD Vision, Central Park Media, and Media Blasters releasing licensed titles under various labels. AD Vision's label Soft Cell Pictures released 19 titles in 1995 alone. Another label, Critical Mass, was created in 1996 to release an unedited version of Violence Jack. When AD Vision's hentai label Soft Cell Pictures shut down in 2005, most of its titles were acquired by Critical Mass. Following the bankruptcy of Central Park Media in 2009, the licenses for all Anime 18 related products and movies were transferred to Critical Mass. Origin of erotic games. The term eroge, erotic games, literally defines any erotic game, but has become synonymous with video games depicting the artistic styles of anime and manga. The origins of eroge began in the early 1980s, when the computer industry in Japan was struggling to find a to define a computer standard with makers like NEC, Sharp, and Fujitsu competing against one another. The PC-98 series, despite lacking processing power, CD drives, and limited graphics, came to dominate the market, with the popularity of Erotic games contributing to its success. Because of vague definitions of what constitutes an erotic game, there are several possible candidates for the first Eroge. If the definition applies to adult themes, the first game was Soft Porn Adventure, released in America in 1981 for the Apple II. This was a text-based comedic game from online systems. If Eroge is defined as the first graphical depictions of or Japanese adult themes, it would be Koei's 1982 release of Nightlife. Sexual intercourse is depicted through simple graphic outlines. Notably, Nightlife was not intended to be erotic, but so much as an instructional guide to support married life. A series of undressing games appeared as early as 1983, such as Strip Mahjong. The first anime-styled erotic game was Ten Shitachi no Gogo, released in 1985 by Jest. In 1988, ASCII released the first erotic role-playing game, Chaos Angel. In 1989, Alice Soft released the turn-based role-playing game Rance, and Elf released Dragon Knight. In the late 1980s, Eroge began to stagnate under high prices in the majority of games containing uninteresting plots and mindless sex. Elf's 1992 release of Dokusei came as customer frustration with Eroge was hunting and spawned a new genre of games called dating sims. Dokusei was unique because it had no defined plot and required the player to build a relationship with different girls in order to advance the story. Each girl had her own story, but the prospect of consummating a relationship required the girl growing to love the player. There was no easy sex. The term visual novel is vague, with Japanese and English definitions classifying the genre as a type of interactive fiction game driven by narration and little player interaction. While the term is often retroactively applied to many games, it was Leaf that coined the term with their Leaf Visual Novel series, LVNS, with the 1996 release of Shizuku and Kizuato. The success of these two dark eroge games would be followed by the third and final installment of the LVNS, with the 1997 romantic eroge Two Heart. Eroge visual novels took a new emotional turn with Tactic's 1998 release 1, Kagyaku Kitsetsu A. Key's 1999 release of Kanon proved to be a major success and would go on to have numerous console ports, 2 manga series, and 2 anime series. Censorship. See also Censorship in Japan. Japanese laws have impacted depictions of works since the Meiji Restoration, but these predate the common definition of hentai material. Since becoming law in 1907, Article 175 of the Criminal Code of Japan forbids the publication of obscene materials. Specifically, depictions of male-female sexual intercourse and pubic hair are considered obscene, but bare genitalia is not. As censorship is required for published work, the most common representations of the blurring dots on pornographic videos and bars and lights on still images. In 1986, Toshio Maeda sought to get past censorship on depictions of sexual intercourse by creating tentacle sex. This led to the large number of works containing sexual intercourse with monsters, demons, robots, and aliens whose genitals look different from men's. While Western views attribute hentai to any explicit work, it was the products of this censorship which became not only the first titles legally imported to America and Europe, but the first successful. While uncut for the American release, the United Kingdom's release of Urotsukidoji removed many scenes of the violence and tentacle rape scenes. It was also because of this law that artists began to depict the characters with a minimum of anatomical details and without pubic hair, by law prior to 1991. Part of the ban was lifted when Nagisa Oshima prevailed over obscenity charges at his trial for the film In the Realm of the Senses. Though not enforced, the lifting of this ban did not apply to anime and manga, as they were not deemed artistic exceptions. Alterations of material or censorship and banning of works are common. The U.S. release of La Blue Girl altered the age of the heroine from 16 to 18. Removed sex scenes with a dwarf ninja named Nin Nin, and removed the Japanese blurring dots. The Blue Girl was outright rejected by UK censors who refused to classify it and prohibited its distribution. In 2011, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan sought a ban on the subgenre lolicon. Demographics. The most prolific consumers of hentai are men. Erotic games in particular combine three favored media: cartoons, pornography, and gaming into an experience. The hentai genre engages a wide audience that expands yearly and desires better quality in storylines, or works which push the creative envelope. Nobuhiro Komiya, a manga censor, states that unusual and extreme depictions in hentai are not about perversion so much as they are an example of the profit-oriented industry. Anime depicting normal sexual situations enjoy less market success than those that break social norms, such as sex at schools or bondage. According to clinical psychologist Megha Hazuri Gorem, because tunes are a kind of Final Fantasy, you can make the person look the way you want him or her to look. Every fetish can be fulfilled. Sexologist Narayan Reddy noted of Verge. Animators make new games because there is a demand for them, and because they depict things that the gamers do not have the courage to do in real life, or that might just be illegal. These games are an outlet for suppressed desire. Classification. The hentai genre can be divided into numerous subgenres, the broadest of which encompasses heterosexual and homosexual acts. Hentai that features mainly heterosexual interactions occurs in both male-targeted ero or dense-muke and female-targeted ladies' comics form. Those that feature mainly homosexual interactions are known as yaoi, or boys' love, male-to-male, and yuri, female-to-female. Both yaoi and, to a lesser extent, yuri are generally aimed at members of the opposite sex from the person depicted. While yaoi and yuri are not always explicit, their pornographic history and association remain. Yaoi's pornographic usage has remained strong in a textual form through fanfiction. The definition of yuri has begun to be replaced by the broader definitions of lesbian-themed animation or comics. Hentai is perceived as dwelling on sexual fetishes. These include dozens of fetish and paraphilia-related subgenres, which can be further classified with additional terms such as heterosexual or homosexual types. Many works are focused on depicting the mundane and the impossible across every conceivable act and situation, no matter how fantastical. One subgenre of hentai is futanari, hermaphroditism, which most often features a female with a penis or penis-like appendage in place of or in addition to a vulva. Futanari characters are primarily depicted as having sex with other women and will almost always be submissive with a male. Exceptions include Yonikuri Kengo's work, which features female empowerment and domination over males. Genres. Gender and age-based genres. Common English terms. Yaoi, shonenai, boys love. Type, gender. Description, male homosexuality. Yuri, shoujo-ai, girls love. Type, gender. Description, female homosexuality. Lolicon. Type, gender and age. Description, centered on prepubescent, pubescent, or post-pubescent underage girls, whether homosexual or heterosexual. Shotokan. Type, gender and age. Description, centered on prepubescent, pubescent, or post-pubescent underage boys, whether homosexual or heterosexual. Fetish and paraphilia-based genres. Banknu. Type, fetish, a genre of pornographic media focusing on the depiction of women with large breasts. The word can literally be translated to exploding breasts. Banknu is a subgenre within the genre of hentai anime. Futanari, type, fetish. Depictions of women that have both phallic genitalia, penis with scrotum, only a penile shaft, or an enlarged clitoris, with or without a vulva or vagina. Incest. Type, fetish, sexual activity with legal family members. Netarare. Fetish. Cheating or being unfaithful to a significant other. Literally taken away by sleeping with. Abbreviated NTR. Omorashi. Fetish. A form of urolagnia. Tentacle erotica. Paraphilia. Depictions of tentacled creatures and sometimes monsters, fictional or otherwise, engaging with sex or rape with girls and less often men. Jososime. Daughter attack. Fetish. Depictions of a kathoi, male cross-dresser or tom girl taking the lead, i.e. the sime, or exhibiting dominance over a sexual partner.